Tiddly-tee, booktubers. So today I'm going to talk about the gentleman's tag. And this is really just my excuse to talk about some videos I've been seeing on BookTube about a supposed dearth of reading literature for editors, etc., that are male. And I have some thoughts about that. Um, Before I get into those, I want to properly um, honor the tag creators Ben Sanders, I believe, and I found it with Ben at Ready Rejects, I think. Can't read my own writing there. Um, it's a 5-6 question tag, so pretty quick. We'll see how long my rant is. It's not a rant, do not worry. Here's my feeling about this. Well, supposedly there's male fiction and female fiction all of a sudden. Or maybe people have thought that there always has been such things. Um, well, I'm glad to say it's a spectrum. Yes, no surprise there, right? Um, I never liked it when they divided things up since kindergarten, boys and girls. Uh, they got the sugar and the spice. We got the newts and snot. No, many of the supposedly female traits, nurturing, creativity, these are things that I cherish, that I've dedicated my life to, that I would argue can be very manly. Believe it or not, this is ingrained in our system and in our society to this day. I had to take a battery of psychometric tests as part of my vetting for seminary, including the Michigan Multiphasic, the Strong, a bunch of these instruments that I had no faith in from my studies in social work. But nonetheless, I was subjected to them. Very interesting process. Glad I had the experience. And, surprise, surprise, certified sane. Those of you who didn't believe. Um, anyway, there's a part of this test, that I could tell the contextualizer, this PhD lady who had to make sense of all this, administering these things to me and showing me the results. There's a part she didn't want to talk about. It's like this big line on the graph. I'm like, what's this about? She's like, oh yeah, well, don't worry about too much. This is, masculinity, femininity, or whatever. And my femininity, I guess, was way up, or my masculinity was way down, or whatever. And, meanwhile, I'm like, are we in the 19th century here? I mean, do I have a swollen uterus? What's going on? But anyway, as she put it, what did she say? Well, you're aesthetic. So you ladies, you get the aesthetics as well. Yeah, no, there is no such thing as male or female reading, um, unless you want there to be. I mean, if it's fun for you to play with that, that's great too. But, um, there are certain books that, let's say maybe might have a mainly male cast of characters because it's a boys' boarding school or it's a military up to recent times when females didn't serve in action at least. Um, but that is never stopped females from writing about boarding schools and I think of Trinity and war. Thank goodness, right? In fact, one of the great Guns of August, one of the seminal texts of war, is a female author. And men can write romance and anything they want, and everything in between. And so there you go. That's what I have to say about that. It's not that boys aren't reading; it's that people aren't reading enough anymore, and that's we got to get creative and got to have things like BookTube and graphic novels and whatever we can do to get fun and exciting stories in front of people and get them to want to consume that. Okay, so that's my blurb on this whole male. Now, the reason I didn't want to make a whole video about it is because I saw a bunch of the titles. I watched one video, which gave me a lot of strong feelings. But if I wanted to do like a proper commentary video on it, video essays, I guess you guys are calling them. I don't feel that. I could call it my mental meanderings video essays. But anyway, I'd want to watch a lot more of those videos to really get the gist, the full gist of the discourse. But I'm not willing to invest that amount of time in that issue. Okay, so let's turn to the prompts finally. The fun stuff. What you're here for. Gentlemen's prompts. Number one is open the door. We should open the door, I guess, for folks. What is a work that opened the door for you to a new genre? I did think hard about this. I started off picaresque from the beginning with Don Quixote. As I mentioned, in one of these tubes, I even read romance for a while there in my auntie's bedroom. Um, you know, um, I can remember, being academically specifically targeted to certain genres like the new roman in grad school. Um, I do remember some of my first attempts of reading sort of more serious graphic novels. Um, what else? I mean, I could because I was so young when I read, Pride and Prejudice and Montesquieu and uh, you know, um, I started with big books as well because, right away with The Lord of the Rings. And, oh, I did have, my mom was great in that she always had lots of subscriptions, different magazines, and including some for us, even things she didn't care about, like Sports Illustrated. Probably didn't approve. Music ones for my brother. I got fantasy and science fiction. So from a very young age, I was subscribed to that. So I saw different kinds of fantasy and science fiction. Amazing, still going um, publication. So the one I decided to talk about is because I don't read as much nonfiction. I remember Aldo Leopold opening doors for me, and the reason is this man could read stories in the woods. Where I take a walk in the woods, I got no idea what's going on here. I can't see the trees for the trees. But he sees, hundreds of stories of all the traces of things that have come and gone in this environment. And he also has the writing ability to make that accessible to me. So he wrote famously the Sand County Almanac. I attended an environmental education conference based around his work because he had set up the first wilderness in the United States, maybe in the world, as distinct from like a national park in the Gila Forest in New Mexico, where I was teaching, doing my master's. And so we went for a really cool weekend in the woods out there, and environmental ed sort of training. And we read Aldo Leopold, and I was blown away. So Aldo Leopold, thank you for opening the world of nature up to me. And there are many others that I love who write about that. Rachel Carson, of course, Peter Matthiessen. But Aldo Leopold, he's really opened the door for me. Okay, pull a chair out. We should pull the chair out for people. All right, so something that made me sit down, I guess, is sort of the idea being that this is a book that you read that knocked you on your keister, I guess. Had a hard time with this one as well, but I have a vivid memory, so I thought I would share this one with you. I liked Castaneda. Didn't matter to me where exactly he got his ideas. I mean, I do believe he encountered something extra U.S. Anglo culture, whether it was a Yaqui Indian named Don Juan or not. I'm not sure, but he definitely conveyed some ideas to me, especially this idea of death as an ally over your shoulder. Some of this stuff, seeing the lines, the warrior moves on these lines. Really powerful stuff that I just feels real to me. But I do remember one. He said, well, the first thing that Don Juan had him do, this Yaqui Indian gentleman, told him, took him on as an apprentice, I guess, and eventually, would use the datura and Jim some different psychotropic substances, natural psychotropic substances, to enhance consciousness. But before he was allowed to do any of that, he had to master some basics. And the very first one was he had to find his color and sit in it. Like if he could look around your environment, and you were able to see patches of color, and one would resonate for you, and you would go sit in that color, then you would be sort of be in your power spot. So I remember once or twice, I won't admit how many times, going and trying to like see my color and sit in my color. I never did succeed. Anyway, so there you go. Castaneda's Don Juan series. Road to Ichitlan. What are all the titles? I can't remember them. Number 3 is polite conversation, although the way this was explained is that we're supposed to talk about a work of literature that we talk about nonstop. So this rather more sounds like mansplaining. Oh gosh, well I would love to talk about all kinds of things nonstop. However, outside of YouTube, I don't talk to people about things that they're not interested in, and I almost never have anyone to talk to about literature. Maybe once in a while some Shakespeare or something if we see a play. But for the most part, people don't want to talk literature with me. I guess the author I've discussed the most ever with anybody by far would be Marx. Before I jumped ship to the Greens, delegate for them in New Mexico, I was with the Democratic Socialists of America. Go to their conferences, young leader conferences, and whatnot, and we would go out on the picket lines with the striking Greyhound workers or the striking 9X workers or whoever it was. This was in New York at the time, undergrad, and yeah, there were a bunch of intellectual types in the group who loved to talk on and on about Marx and Trotsky and Mao and Lenin and Stalin and all kinds of communism, Fidel, all that good stuff. What they couldn't do, I'm sad to say, and I enjoyed that to some extent. I didn't have the full philosophical background for it at that time. I talked a lot more philosophy. I've talked a lot more philosophy than literature. People like to talk philosophy. Since then, about influences on Marx with Feuerbach and different people. But yes, what those Marxist intellectuals couldn't do is talk to these guys on the picket line. They had nothing to say to sort of your regular worker type. I was lucky then that I went for the dollar breakfast in the diners. A lot of these guys frequented, so I was used to sort of talking to a lot of them. And I sort of grew up working class, which if you're a Brit means quite a bit more than if you're a Yank. So anyway, talked a lot of Marx for my sins. Okay, next one, number 4, compliment. And they're going to change the middle vowel on this. So we should give compliments as gentlemen, I guess. And the idea is to pick a complementary your work of fiction to go with something else you read. Or don't read a ton of series. But what I do remember is discovering Woody Allen's short fictions that he wrote mainly for the New Yorker that are hilarious, and of all different kinds of literary genres as well. I mean, including analyzing laundry lists of the impressionist painters, or I don't know what, of mafia at one point, and other various fun little satires of different genres. I remember someone getting sucked into Madame Bovary, and through because the prostitute reads you literature, and then instead he gets chased around by the irregular IR verbs in Spanish textbook. It's crazy stuff. Anyway, fun, very fun. And I don't remember the very first one I read. Was it Thing with Feathers? Getting Even? There are 4 now. For a long time there were 3. Anyway, I read one of them, and after that I sought out. I mean, I have rarely sought out something so strategically as I wanted to read all of his story collections, and they were all hilarious. Those would be books that I would like to still have in my bookshelf to turn to from time to time, like Earthquakes. However, I do not own them anymore, alas. Maybe they're somewhere in the middle of Texas. Okay. Pay the check. So this one, we're supposed to choose something that fits the bill. This is a split prompt because there's also splitting the bill. And I'm supposed to name a couple that, I think a couple in literature that I think is, really co-empowered. Yes, let's put it that way. So something that fits the bill. Well, I often mention that I don't know how to recommend works of reading to people because it really depends on what they like to read. Well, it's sort of the same with myself. I have so many selves, as you can see by the variety of stuff that I read, that it sort of depends what mood I'm in, I guess, strangely. For example, I might suffer an earthquake, and it might put me in a very philosophical mood, and I'll want to read, some deep stuff. Or it might be that I want to read something just hilarious and just take my mind off it. Or I might want to read something sad and just have a good cry it out. What fits the bill? What did I turn to? Yes, a very nice Thai book that I'm about to make a video on is what I had out from the library called The Judgment. So that's what I read. It was actually a very sad and lonely fellow, but also a very Buddhist book. So it gave me the sadness, which is sort of a starting point for a lot of Buddhism, but also gave me some comfort. So you'll have to see my other video to hear more about that one. And the couple that I think makes the most sense, well, the funniest thing is the first couples that came to mind from Romanticism, as in the 19th century literary movement and artistic movement, are actually terrible couples, most of them, like Attila and Renee, by Chateaubriand. You've got Paul and Virginie, you've got Adolphe, by Benjamin Constant. They all end horribly, and you wouldn't really hold up the couples as sort of, co-empower each other. So then, believe it or not, the very first people that came to mind is Nick and Nora from The Great Thin Man, mainly movies. I know them mainly through the movies. They're written by Dashiell Hammett. They are, I wouldn't hold them up to modern couples. They are drunk by 2 in the afternoon, always with a martini in their hand, a quip on their lip, and they're constantly teasing each other, but they love each other to death. And meanwhile, they're solving murder mysteries. They're a lot of fun. If you don't know Nick and Nora, go and check them out. So that's it. Those are the gentlemen tag prompts and my little thought about literature for men or women. Thank you for indulging me.